Welcome to another Paranormal, the New Normal bonus episode. The new episodes we do that will drop on Wednesdays. And we are recording this one a long time before it's going to release, but that's okay. I like to have future content lined up, and that works out perfectly for me. And this is a continuation, actually. I was just on Barnaby's show, and if you want to listen to part one, listen to his show, and I'll let him tell you about his show since he knows more about it than I do. And that show is Whispers in the Dark.
From the dark.
From the dark. But yeah, so Whispers from the Dark, which part one will be on that show. It should be released 2 days before this episode drops. So you can check that out first, and I'll make sure to put it in the show notes for this episode anyway, so you can go there first. Barnaby, why don't you tell them about what you do in the paranormal world?
Oh man, I do everything. I am a cryptozoologist and a paranormal researcher. I am the founder of Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, which is CAPS right behind me here. We do a bi-monthly YouTube series where we document about hour-long video documentaries on all of our investigations. We've done everything from Bigfoot to the Chicago Mothman sightings, Ghosts of Gettysburg, haunted coal mines. We have gone all over the United States and Upper Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. I also am the host of Whispers from the Dark podcast, which you were just on this past week. And I am also the host of Monday Morning Monsters on WLTK DB Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm on a lot of podcasts, but that right there is just equal to what I do is anyway. So you know what it's like to be busy, which is a good thing.
Oh, plus we offer paranormal tours of a haunted location of the Gainers Tavern or Bean Snappers. So when I'm not out doing podcasts or investigations or speaking at conventions and other paranormal events and cryptid events, we do the tours. And yeah, I'm busy every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Plus I have a 40-hour week day job too.
Same. So yeah, it's a busy life. It's a busy life, that's for sure. Well, we stopped talking on your show. Basically, we were talking about chupacabras at that point, and we covered a menagerie of different cryptids before that, which we won't go back into that because let them listen to your episode to hear that.
That's right.
As you all know, my show is famous for its creature feature segment because who doesn't like to just talk about theories of cryptids? It's just an interesting topic that everybody can get into and throw their own little theories out about. So let's move on to one that we didn't talk about in your show. And let's go. Well, actually, we did mention it on your show slightly, but I wanted to say it from my show anyway. So let's talk about mokele-mbembe and the idea of do dinosaurs still exist on Earth in the remote regions that humans do not go to yet?
That's very interesting because as we're filming this this coming Monday, I'm doing an entire Monday Morning Monsters with Shitan Noir about this topic. So this is a warm-up. I like this. Yeah, mokele-mbembe, very interesting, was actually first reported by Carl Hagenbeck of the Hagenbeck and Wallace Circus. So he was out, he was a big game hunter and stuff over in Africa. He would go out and capture animals for circuses, museums, and zoological societies back in the day. And he was getting these reports of these giant, or this giant, I guess, creature by the natives, excuse me, in the Congo River basin of Africa. And he actually first reported that in his book that he wrote. The name escapes me right now, but he had this book about all these creatures and stuff that he was out hunting and capturing and stuff. And that's where the actual name and the creature first started. But yeah, I guess, you know, for as much as we look for these creatures and that, the natives that are out there, the people that live in those areas, they know all the animals. So when outsiders come in and they're like, well, it was just an elephant or it was just a hippo or something like that, they've shown these pictures to the people that live there, and it's not that. they show them a picture of an elephant, they show them a picture of a hippo, and they go, no, no, that's not what we saw. They show them a picture of like a brachiosaurus or a brontosaurus or something like that, and they all nod, yes, that's what we saw. So, going back to like a lot of people talk about, ancient aliens and stuff like that. People drew what they saw. They
Yep.
don't know what it is. They don't have an understanding of what they're looking at, but they drew these pictures. So when you show them a picture of this dinosaur and you say, is this what you saw? And they say yes. Well, they don't know that this animal has been extinct for however many years, and that's what they're seeing. And I think that's a lot more credible of a credible witness to these events and stuff than actually, the scientists and stuff that are saying that these things don't exist, because obviously these guys are seeing something out there.
100%. And with all these like recent developments in the world, like there's I don't know where exactly it is, but I believe it's in China, maybe Japan, but I'm thinking China. They found an old section of forest that's kind of in a crater, and it has trees that no human has ever seen as of today, like just trees and all that no one has seen. So, but
I don't know what's going on over here.
technical difficulties, folks. But
Yeah.
but these forests, who's to say they're not hiding creatures that we thought were extinct, but just were living in protection in this little crater where nothing could disturb them, no humans could kill them, or no other animals could kill them, really. And I mean, who know? In the deep, there's also stories from, I want to say it's Chile or Colombia, of a tribe that they know there's a raptor in the woods, that if you go in the woods at night, this raptor will kill you and eat you. And they tell visitors, do not go in there. They respect this thing like a god almost, because it's to them a very fearful thing that they should be wary of. So I always like to go back to when I was in elementary school. There was always this one book in the library at school I checked out that was cryptids. It was Bigfoot, Loch Ness, all the basic ones that everybody knows about. But at the end, there was a little chapter that was like 5 pages long. What if dinosaurs still exist? And there was a picture of a huge T-Rex right in the front page, which, I mean, I have a feeling that if a T-Rex still existed, we might know about that by now, because that's going to be hard for anybody to not see or hear. But raptors, I could believe in. Maybe some plant eating, non-carnivore, herbivores, dinosaurs that are still in Africa or still in remote parts of South American jungles. I could believe that as well. And just look at the reports of pterodactyl-like creatures that come out of the American Southwest, including, I believe it was on a Monster Quest or Monsters and Mysteries in America back in the day. And I've heard of newspaper clippings about this as well, where they would come down and pick up a young child playing in the front yard of his house. And the mom would see out the kitchen window or something similar, and she'd yell, and the father and all the neighbors would come with their guns and blasted the thing, trying to get it to stop. And usually it would just drop the kid, but I've heard some cases where the kid didn't get dropped and they never saw the kid again. It was just taken, probably back to a nest to feed young pterodactyls. I mean, who knows? But it's just, there's so much different stories out there of things that could be related to dinosaurs. I mean, even Loch Ness or other water monsters and sea serpents could be dinosaurs left over, that the oceans would be the perfect place for them to live through the ice age and just stay down there and eat fish or eat whales, whatever they want to eat, or just plants if they're plant eaters. But there's so many different options out there for how these things could have existed that it's possible. And I mean, I've had people on this show bring up Antarctica too. What if there's actually like a Marvel Comics type savage land in Antarctica where these things thrive still, and there's all of them in there, and they have no way to get out, so they're stuck in there, and we haven't explored Antarctica fully yet, so maybe we just haven't found the entrance.
Kind of like Land of the Lost.
That too, yes. It's usually the other one I like to mention when I say that, but forgot about that one for a second. But it's just interesting. It's interesting that these things could still exist, and my son loves the fact that they still could, because every time I say it, his jaw drops open. He's like, "Can we go there?" I'm like, "I'm not going to Antarctica. No. I like warmth. I don't like cold."
Well, I was going to bring up, you were talking about like the flying dinosaurs and stuff in the Southwest. I mean, couple weeks from now is the Van Meter, Iowa Visitor Festival. And that whole festival is based around this flying pteranodon, pterosaur thunderbird creature that came down and terrorized the whole town of Van Meter, Iowa for a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden they shot at it and all this stuff and that just disappeared. So you have these sightings all over the world. And most recently they've been talking about with the Arctic and the Antarctic thawing and stuff, the poles, that there's possibility of mammoths still being alive, especially up in like Alaska, and that small populations of woolly mammoths or mastodons still roaming around, because you have this whole wilderness of untouched area up there that, people, I don't think people realize how big Alaska actually is. It's, like half the size of the United States as is, and there's very few people that live up in Alaska, and there's a lot of untouched, wilderness up there that these things could be living. Quite recently, we actually discovered an entire species of forest elephants that were living in, I believe, Asia or the upper part of Africa or something. One of those over there, I think it's Asia. But these smaller elephant species that were just completely living in the forest that we thought were the same as the grassland elephants and stuff, but it turns out they're a completely different species.
Yeah, I heard about those elephants being discovered a few months ago, or in the last year at least. Which, it's funny that you're talking about the Van Meter visitor event, because my other podcast, Bracket Bastards, which all listeners of this show know about, most of the people on that podcast are from Iowa. So I actually sent a message out to them like, hey, do you guys know about this? And why has no one told me? So I don't know. Maybe. It's in September, you said? I might have to make a trip out to Aji.
It is September 24th this year. It's actually going to be in a couple weeks there. And the CAPS team will be out at Van Meter, and a bunch of other really cool people will be out there speaking and stuff. So should be a good time.
May have to come out and do a little podcast promoting, but we'll see.
Sounds good. Let me know.
Yeah, I definitely would if I decide to go there, though I think I'm going to Mexico in November, so it might be a financial thing, so who knows. But
Iowa is right on the way down to Mexico, just so you know.
Oh,
if you start at Canada and go straight down, you can't miss Iowa.
Yeah, well, but it's basically like, well, it's a financial thing more than and it's 2 months apart, so I can't just fly one to the other. But unless I'm stuck in Iowa for a long time, but yeah, most of them are from Pella, Iowa, which is by Van Meter, I believe. But all right, so you just said another name of a cryptid that we could talk about: Thunderbirds. Which that's one of my theories about Thunderbirds, that they are pterodactyls, that the Native Americans just didn't know what to call them, and because their wings sounded like thunder, they called them Thunderbirds. Or, well, their name for it, and we translated it to Thunderbirds, but of course. But I mean, do we think these mythological godlike birds might be something different all completely? Like they may actually be able to control weather?
I haven't done too much research into Thunderbirds yet. It typically goes, whatever we're doing for our episodes for CAPS is where like I spend an entire year doing certain episodes, and that we do a couple episodes a year that are stuff that we get called for and that. And then we typically have 2 episodes that we initiate and do the research on. It's been like Bigfoot or aliens and Mothman and stuff the last couple of years. And we haven't done a Bigfoot episode, a Thunderbird episode yet. I did actually get to hang out with Ken Gerhard recently, who has done a lot of research into Thunderbirds. And I was just at a convention with Allison Jornlin, who gave a whole presentation on Thunderbirds and that. But as far as I know, I don't know. I would say that they're, just like you said, prehistoric creatures or something that, may have lived up until the modern days of the Native Americans and that. I recently did hear a theory that I thought was really interesting, is that on my episode, we were talking about the Bridgewater Triangle. and stuff like that, and the Alaskan Triangle or the Bermuda Triangle, and these areas of disappearances of planes and other things like that. And this person put forth a theory that when these airplanes and stuff go disappearing into these triangles, that they're actually transported through time. So these things that people are seeing, these thunderbirds and stuff like that, that are shooting fire or that are actually just planes that have been pushed back in time. So these things that are, causing thunder and roaring in the sky and all that stuff might actually just be these planes of modern day that have been appearing in the past. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I don't know if I believe it or not, but it definitely helps fit the bill. It definitely helps with some of those theories and where these people are seeing it.
I mean, yeah, definitely. It's interesting theory. It's kind of like that new show that came out in this last year where LA opens up and they all fall back into caveman era. But it kind of reminds me of that. But I have heard theories about especially about the Bermuda Triangle being a possible time warp location, or even an interdimensional location where maybe these planes and ships and everything disappeared, just going to another dimension. And if we went through that dimension, we would just see tons of skeletons and tons of human vehicles just abandoned and lost forever because they had no way of getting back home.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there was a civilization of humans living there that found out how to survive there, and just every time a new ship comes through, they rescue people off it and they try to help. But who knows?
It does bring up a good point, though, is, if these planes are going back in time and stuff, where's the wreckage?
Exactly.
You would still find like fossilized planes or something. I don't know.
I mean, because I hate to keep comparing it to this, but in the show I was talking about, that's what they do, is like the people that went in the past start leaving notes and stuff in the dirt, and then the people find them in the exact same location. Sambrea, that's what it's called. Sambrea. La Brea, yeah, that's what the show is called. But they leave things in the past, and the people in the current time can find them in the ground still, in like a necklace or a letter. And like there would be stuff we'd find currently in current days when when people are digging for oil fields or for mining or any other reason, farming even. They would find wreckages and they'd be like, "Why is this in the ground?" And
especially because nowadays you'd be able to trace, with the black boxes or the serial numbers and stuff. If you found a plane that was, like, let's say, I don't know any of the other aircraft or anything that disappeared, but you have Amelia Earhart, right?
Yep.
So if Amelia Earhart's plane took off and went through the Bermuda Triangle and ended up, back in caveman days or something, now you would find the wreckage of this possibly, and you would be able to trace back some of the stuff that was there and go, why is Amelia Earhart's airplane, 10 million years old now? I don't know, but, or maybe it's possible that it just be completely disintegrated after that amount of time,
It's possible, but metals like that take a long time to completely just break down naturally. They have huge half-lives, so I don't know. But maybe that's why we can't find Noah's Ark. But yeah, we're not gonna get into religion. That's a whole nother topic. But all right, I like to bring this one up on Creature Feature all the time because it's a newer thing and it's a newer cryptid that people don't know about as often. And I want to test you on it.
All right.
Mirrored men.
Ooh. I have no idea what you're talking about.
This was something that I first heard about on when people called in calls about it on Derek Hayes' Monsters Among Us podcast. And there's another podcast out there. I forget what it's called. I apologize if they listen to this, but they coined the term mirrored men. And basically what it is three men, or they look like men, walking in synchronicity. Anytime one takes a step, the other takes a step. And anytime they look a certain direction, they all look a certain direction. And they're usually they've been seen in the suburbs, in cities, usually late at night if someone's looking out their window. But I've also heard stories of them being seen on trails in the woods, and people generally lose time when they're looking at when they see these things, they lose up to, I've heard, 12, 14 hours.
Yikes. Yeah, I guess when you first said that, I was thinking of like a mirrored face or like a mirrored
Oh,
body, kind of like a shimmer person or something.
oh, like a glimmerman.
Yeah, kind of like that. But I was like, I've never heard that term. But yeah, actually, that you now you explain it, it seems more like I've heard a lot about this phenomenon in like the glitching in the Matrix kind of situation,
Yeah,
where you're driving down the street and you see the same person, like you pass the same person like every block or something, and they're standing there, or like you said, they're all doing the exact same motion, or you're looking at like a I've seen like pictures of like old concerts and stuff. Excuse me. And there'll be three, excuse me. There'll be like three people in the audience that all have the same hat, the same watch, and the same cell phone standing there, you know, looking at it or something. And they're just like duplicates or doppelgangers of the same person. So yeah, I have heard about that. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, I've seen some very weird things, you know, personally in that. But
I mean, one of the most common theories about them is, what if they are men in black?
Mhm.
And what if they they don't even do this they do this naturally, this walking together, this synchronicity. But what if it means the men in black are not necessarily men? What if they're extraterrestrial, or what if they're like the movies would have us believe, or what if they're androids of some kind that were invented way before anybody knew androids existed, and they are there just to perform a task of keeping things secret, and maybe that's why they're seen in the woods at night. They've been seen in the woods because maybe they're hiding a Sasquatch or preventing people from seeing a Sasquatch or any other cryptid that lives in the woods. Or what if they're seen in suburbs and whatnot because they're stopping people from seeing aliens or something along those lines. And the fact that you lose time is a very extraterrestrial abduction thing. It's losing time because you don't know you've been abducted. You just feel like you lost. You look at the clock and it's 8 hours later and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main two theories that have been posed with these, is Men in Blacks and alien related. But I don't know. I mean, it's not a big enough phenomenon where a lot of people have talked about it and it's become like a huge subject. But I do know that it became a huge thing off the bat on Monsters Among Us and this other podcast that identified them as that, like, named them as well. It's one of those things that you just start hearing about and it's like, why am I hearing about this more and more? It's kind of creepy.
It's like the Hat Man phenomenon.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah, we had some one of the locations that we investigate, the Gainers Tavern or Bean Snappers, has this Hat Man entity there, and I joined a bunch of Facebook groups and stuff that have like witness accounts and stuff like that. And I Google searched it and I looked for all this information and I couldn't find much. I mean, it's out there, but I couldn't find what I was looking for, right? And recently, I just went to a conference with Mike Ricksecker, who literally like wrote the book on Shadow Men and Hat Man. He has a documentary out and all this stuff. And met him, talked to him. That day, I actually gave a presentation at this event about the Gainers Tavern and the Shadow Man and stuff, and had a lady come up to me after the event and tell me her story about the Shadow Man. After that day, all of a sudden, I'm getting all these notifications of people posting on that Hat Man message board. Like there hadn't been any activity on there for like a year, you know, and all of a sudden there's all these people sharing stories of their experiences. All of a sudden I've found like 3 or 4 other podcasts that have all talked about this and have witnesses on it. And it's very weird that all of a sudden all this stuff has come to light since that one weekend that I met Mike. And it's just like a weird synchronicity that for a year I'd been looking for it. Podcasts, anybody witnesses stories, couldn't find nothing. After that weekend, it's like a floodgate opened about it. So,
I mean, any listener who wants to learn more about this, you can easily Google Monsters Among Us. There's a Mirrored Men special he did where it's all mirrored men stories from people people calling in their own stories. So it's definitely something to check out because there's so many different, they're all different too. I mean, a lot of it is kids in their bedroom late at night and they look out the window and they come to and it's morning, which makes me think, makes me lean towards extraterrestrial in some way, but with all this, you can't really lean towards it anyway because it's just too many options.
Mhm.
All right, let's go to. Trying to think some. Actually, well, yeah, my favorite topic, as everybody in my that this is my show knows, dogmen,
Mhm.
because I spent hours one day looking at every encounter on the American Dogmen Project website on their map and just, I want to get the people who made that site on here to talk about it, but because I am a huge fan of their work and I read all their encounters, and even if a half of them are made up lies, then that's still a lot of encounters that cannot be explained. And dogmen go back in time, which I'll get into in a bit, but I want to hear what you think about them first.
Absolutely. I mean, here I am living in Wisconsin, which is, Dogman Central right here because we got the Beast of Bray Road. And Linda Godfrey has literally written books and books on this thing and coined the term Beast of Bray Road. We have gone up and down Bray Road looking for this thing. We did a whole episode with Lee Hample, who has been on Expedition X. He's been on a couple other shows with his property. His property backs up to Bray Road. So his property literally is the same area as Bray Road. He's had weird encounters, weird sightings on his property. We got to go spend the entire night out there investigating this. I've never seen anything out there. We've had some weird stuff happen on his property while out there investigating. A lot of weird stuff. Heard something large run through the cornfield next to us. Heard some growling and stuff. But I haven't had my own encounter yet with it. We've been working on doing a Dogman episode, but we haven't got to that one yet. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of witnesses have seen a lot of stuff down in the area of Elkhorn, Bray Road area. And it's still going on to this day. They just built this big a tree stump carving of the Dogman on Bray Road. And it's really cool. Anybody that goes down there gets to see this thing. You drive down the road, you can't miss it. It's like 8 feet tall. Really cool chainsaw carving of the beast. But yeah, I don't know what it is. It bothers me. The Dogman and Mothman are kind of like the same little subgroup right here of cryptids, because with Bigfoot, as we talked about on my show, you have Gigantopithecus, you have ancient hominids, you have some skeletal evidence, you have a primate record for these things, you have gorillas, you have humans, you have a precedent for a giant ape creature. Aside from the dire wolf, you don't have a precedent for the Dogman. You don't have a fossil record.
Well, that you don't have a fossil record, but
yeah.
Look at Anubis.
I was getting there.
Yeah. Okay.
Just... Yeah. But you don't have that the fossil record. Like I said, you don't have the bodies and stuff that you can look at that says that this might be a creature. You do have a lot of mythology and folklore and stuff. And like we said, if back to mokele-mbembe and stuff, if people are seeing these things, they saw something. And a lot of these sightings, okay, some of it, I would say maybe 25% of the Dogman reports you could write off and say, well, it was probably a Bigfoot, or just a regular dog, we'll say, okay, or a werewolf, no, or a wolf or some giant beast like that. But there's a lot of weird stuff that comes out there that you can't write off as Bigfoot. It doesn't have the same body structure. It doesn't have the same characteristics or anything like that. So these people are definitely seeing something out there that isn't a Bigfoot, isn't a known creature. What it is, I don't know. Like you said, Anubis, there's a lot of mythology and stuff about these dog-headed creatures. I never get this right. Eastern Orthodox Methodists, I believe, I think that's what it is, have a patron saint, Christopher, who is a dog-headed saint. And supposedly the story goes that he was a dog-headed person who he was a Canaanite,
Yeah.
right? So Canaanites are the same as Anubis. They're the same religious grouping. They're the ones. The Canaanites were Anubis's people, were the dog-headed people, and he was cursed with the head of a dog. And he went out and he wanted to do his diligence or whatever of fixing himself or whatever. So he went out and he asked to have his head changed to a human and be fixed. And I can't remember who sent him out to this. I think it was a priest or something, sent him out to this river. And St. Christopher was this large man, 7-8 feet tall creature with the head of a dog. So his job was to ferry people across this river and help them cross. And so one day he carried this boy across this river, and he said, it feels like you're just a little boy, but you have like the weight of the world on your shoulders. And he carried him across, and supposedly this person was Jesus. And that's why he was so weighted with the weight of the world and everything. And Jesus turned his head back into a normal person and changed him back into a man and took away whatever curse or whatever was upon him. And so that's how he became the patron saint of travelers. And that's St. Christopher's story. But it's interesting because you have that whole story. You have the whole story of Anubis and the Canaanites going to war against, the Israelites, and the Canaanites themselves, canine being Canaan, canine dog, all kind of fits that same bill. So I don't know.
Well, plus being in Wisconsin, you're not far from the land between the lakes either, which has the beast of the land between the lakes, which has been some of the most gory, horrific stories of dogmen encounters ever known. And I wouldn't want to stay in that cabin in that land overnight because I would be scared shitless of what could happen there. I mean, they found a little girl's body hanging from a tree like it got attacked by a dog. So, and it's just that there's been a lot of different attacks up there, and it's creepy. It's very creepy. That island is, I'd say, cursed almost. But I mean, as far as dogmen go, I mean, it kind of leans into human suit wearer walker mythology as well. The word that we don't like to say in this show, but because I mean, the difference between dogmen and werewolves, as all listeners of my show know by this point, is dogmen do not have the full moon lore. They don't have the silver bullet lore, any of that. They're just
that we know of.
But then again, these dogmen are seen all the time. They're not seen just on full moon. So they can't all have that affliction on them.
Well, there's also a lot of different types of dogman. You have the Anubis looking ones, the long pointed ears, which is interesting because those we were talking about like the shadow entities and stuff on the last show too. A lot of the Anubis style dogmen are seen like in people's bedrooms. They'll show up at the foot end of their bed and stuff like that. You have a lot of that kind of stories with those. You also have like the werewolf looking ones, which are the ones like the Beast of Bray Road and stuff like that. And you also have this weird hyena looking dogman creature. So you don't just have Bigfoot, you have a little variance, color, style a little bit, like some say like the baboon face or whatever, but with dogmen, you have a whole variety of what these things are supposed to look like in that too. Which
if you go the walker route, it could be a curse put on these people that last and makes them immortal and makes them have to live with this forever until they are killed by something that they could be killed by. But could also it be a genetic thing that it's passed down in families and then these people just become vagrants or well, kind of like hobos more back in the day, and they travel from place to place and they just try to keep hidden. They stay in the woods. I mean, there's a famous song that was written, I think, in the 70s about about a dog running into a group of loggers chase a dog into a hollow log, and out the other end walks a man. Derek Hayes has played it on his podcast multiple times. It's a very funny, interesting song, but kind of creepy as well. It'll make that hair in the back of your neck stand up a little bit. But it's just, I love Dogmen because I feel like just the stories of werewolves, which is a word I hate, but the stories of those going back to the Beast of Govardhan. I know I just butchered that French town. Javadon, yeah. I just butchered it again, probably, but I'm not good with French names. But going back to that and going back to all the mythological and medieval legends of these creatures, what if they were just dogmen and that's what they were seeing and they just called it werewolves because they had nothing else to call it, and they couldn't fathom that dog and men could be the same. But I had a guest on my show, well, months before this episode, named Christopher Susi, who he was in the army and he was in Egypt. He was deployed in Egypt at this point, and one of his buddies who was from New Orleans, he saw a statue of Anubis and he pointed at it. He said, "What's that statue of?" And he's like, "I saw that when I was a kid twice, and in New Orleans." He said the first time he saw it in his backyard, I believe, looking out his bedroom window, and it looked right up at him. And then another time he was fishing in a river on a raft or a boat, and the same creature came paddling past him, turned around, looked at him, and then kept paddling. And when they told him that's an ancient Egyptian god called Anubis, he's like, "But I've seen it when I was a kid, like 20 years ago, less than 20 years ago." I mean, it's just mind blowing. Like the fact that someone could see it, someone who never has been to Egypt before, never knew anything about Egyptian culture, could see a statue and say, "I've seen that."
Well, yeah. Louisiana has its whole culture based on that as the Rougarou. I mean, this is its own name, its own thing down there. You know, the same Dogman, Beast of Bray Road thing. It's just called different things seen there. But the Rougarou is a big deal down in Louisiana and the swamps and stuff. A lot of people see it. It's part of their culture.
Yeah, I mean, well, Small Town Monsters just did a actual documentary on it, the how the Rougarou, but and the Rougarou is basically just the Orleans version of a dogman, and I believe it came over from Africa. That name did not, because
I'm not sure.
Because as most things in New Orleans, all that Cajun culture came from a mix of African and Southern culture mixed together. So
I thought that was more like French.
Yeah, like a French and
France, yeah.
Yeah, because then
does that have to be the French Quarter?
Yeah, exactly. Because then
yeah.
France owned Florida for a while too, I believe. So, or that was Spain. That was Spain. But it's hard to keep it all straight.
Same
nowadays.
area.
Kind of, yeah. And if dogmen exist all over the world, then every nation would have their own stories of it, going back to that beginning of history.
One thing you didn't touch on is the whole thing with the Third Reich and Hitler. One of the stories coming out of the concentration camps over there was that Hitler was trying to breed werewolves, and that a lot of the people that were in these concentration camps used to see the werewolves like patrolling the concentration camps. Because he was into a lot of the occult and the crystal skulls and the UFOs and the aliens and all that stuff. And I've always thought it was interesting that he was trying to breed werewolves.
Yeah, which I mean, I actually have never really I've heard of it, but loosely, but I never really read or seen documentaries about it or anything. But I mean, Hitler was into a lot of strange stuff, and I mean, that almost sounds like something out of a comic book, but it's true because he did look into all this stuff, and he wasn't all there all the time. But if he was looking into this stuff, it had to exist at some point back then, or be legend at least. Which that's 100 years ago almost, so 80 years ago. So it had to have some recognition back then as well. All right, I think we'll move on to. I think we'll do this one. It's interesting. Mer people.
Ooh, that's a topic we don't get to discuss very often. Yeah. I, I, I don't know. There's a lot of ways we could go with this. I mean, you have, well, so the basis. Let me go to this for real quick. CAPS, Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. Each member of our team focuses on a different area of study, right? So I do a lot of cryptozoology. We have a empath. We have a medium. We have all different, like a researcher, investigators. But each of us focuses our studies, our research on different areas. And by doing that, it allows us to put all these different things together. And so looking into the Bigfoot phenomenon, for example, you can look at, as an interdimensional, a UFO, you can look at it as a fairy creature and all that stuff. So you get all this different lore and mythology and stuff to put into this one bundle, and it helps put more of a complete picture on the history and stuff of these things. And the reason why I bring this up is because mermaids are of the Fey lore, of the
Yes.
fairies, the trolls, and all that stuff. So that's where I went down with that whole road. But I wanted to bring that up because we have done a lot of research with the fairy creatures and stuff like that. Not so much with the mer people in that yet, but I don't know where I stand on that. A lot of the stories and that you hear, I feel are a lot of just that, like stories. I mean, you have the whole P.T. Barnum's Fiji mermaid. That was a hoax.
Yeah.
That was something he perpetrated. And then you have like the lore that goes with pirates or the explorers and stuff like that, of the sirens, the people that lured people to the islands and stuff like that. But that's totally different than what a mermaid actually would be. They're not sirens. So
Well, I mean, what if they were evolved from Atlantean people?
mhm.
Because Atlantis was supposedly a real place, and the ancient Greeks wrote about it. I believe it was Herodotus who wrote about them in his book, or might have that name wrong, but
Yeah, I just listened to a whole podcast about that.
me too.
Yeah.
Parcast mythology, I believe, but
Paranormal Almanac.
I have not heard of that podcast.
Kurt Sandvig, Paranormal Almanac. I will give him a shout out. He does a great job on his show. Friends with him on Facebook. Awesome show. He deep dives into a lot of topics, a lot of subjects and stuff, and he'll go through the work to try and debunk a lot of stuff and find actual articles and research the topic. So I highly recommend Paranormal Almanac.
I have to because we need research for our new podcast we're starting, so that might be something I have to look into. See if he's covering our first topic, which will by the time this comes out, it doesn't matter because it'll be dropping way before this. But our first topic will be Wendigo.
Ooh. I can't remember if I've listened to a Wendigo episode of his, but
I could
I
look.
want to say he has.
Probably. I mean, everybody touches on it eventually, but
I just listened to his one on Atlantis though. So
yeah, there was one of the ancient Greek writers wrote about
yep.
it because Greece and Atlantis went to wars at one point, supposedly. And what I mean, Atlantis interests me always because what if they did start evolving, or they made themselves evolve because they're supposed to be so technologically superior to the rest of the world, that what they evolved into half fish people, and when they knew their island was sinking, they said we'd rather live on our own still than moving with the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I've also heard theories that what if mermaids are shapeshifting humans who can make themselves turn half fish so they can live underwater at times, like the
Yeah,
Selkie,
that's
kind of like the Selkie
yes.
lore, or
Mhm.
which I read a book about that when I was in school as a kid, and that interests me a lot because it's kind of like a werewolf of the sea almost, the way it has to change every month. But I don't know, mer people. I find it so hard to believe. Like they did during Shark Week one year, they did a great like documentary about it, and then like it turns out the whole thing was just faked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Like
I wasn't going to bring that up, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
I only bring it up because it was brought up on a episode I did a few weeks ago, well, a few months ago at this point. But But yeah, it was brought up before in one of my episodes, and just I I don't know. I was kind of pissed when that documentary was fake when I found that out later on. I was like, oh, come on. You gave me so much hope in this documentary. But
Hmm.
I mean, I just have a hard time believing that, oh, yeah, they were seeing manatees because they're going to mistake a
Yep.
big creature for a attractive human. Like, I don't see that. I don't
Hey, to
care.
each his own.
Yeah. I mean, BBW lovers unite, but I don't see they were
Big beautiful manatees.
well, there already are big beautiful men, so that would fit right in
Yeah.
that category. But I mean, I just don't see it because I mean, no matter you can't be that drunk or that out of it all the time, even on a ship where you're gonna think that something is always gonna be looking like a mermaid. Like it can't be always be a manatee. It can't always be other things. Like it's got to be eventually. So they're seeing something. I mean, same as sea monsters. Like they're seeing something if they're reporting it over again.
Mhm.
Yet they can't all be giant squids or colossal squids, which we now know exist. But there's there are ones that are described as pure reptilian creatures. So
It also depends where you're seeing these mer creatures, because manatees, dugongs, those creatures only live in certain areas of the world. So if you're out in deep sea, you're not going to run into a manatee. Though they live like more in like the
groves.
swamps and stuff. Yeah, the
Yeah,
groves. So you're not going to find them. But
I
yeah,
used to actually have manatees drink out of my grandfather's hose in Florida on a canal.
cool.
And you actually would see the ones that got hit by boats and everything because you'd see like the bruises on their stomachs and whatnot. But which is sad, but
Mhm.
it's gonna happen if they're living in the same area. If they're living in the water and there's boats in the canal, that's gonna happen. It's just sad but true. All right, I think we'll maybe touch on one more, maybe two, depending on how long the first one takes. But we'll see, and then we might call it a session. But let's jump to, and I'm trying to find something we haven't done. Actually, well, you said you were researching this, but we never recently, but we haven't talked about it. Mothmen or Mothman. Yes, that that very attractive creature you just showed me.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So we recently, this past year, it was January and March, we released a two-part episode on the sightings in the Chicagoland area. And these sightings are still going on. We went down there and spent a couple weekends in that researching, talking to witnesses. We walked all over downtown Chicago trying to talk to the police officers and stuff to see what really we could find out going on down there. I ran into more questions than I actually got answers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of conspiracy, not even around Mothman, but around the people that are reporting the stories. So
Yes.
the people that are putting out the reports are just as mythology as the creature itself. And when I first released the episode, I don't know what to think of all that stuff, because you look at it with two different sides of the coin. Here is all of the reports that are coming out from like three sources. Three different websites are putting out all the reports of the Chicago Mothman. But when you search, like let's say I had a sighting and I search weird moth, weird bat creature, whatever, all of the sites, the Google links and stuff lead back to these three websites, right? So if I'm going to report, I'm going to report to one of these three sites. So I guess, all right, we'll buy that. Since then, I have actually run across two reports of sightings prior to all of the reports in Chicago that came out in 2017. So before these guys started reporting the Chicago Mothman, there was two reports that came out in 2017 before anyone else reported these to these clearinghouses and reporting sites. So now this leads me to believe that something actually was being cited and from different people than actually were what was reporting. And that's what I was looking for. That's what I was trying to find with these things. So the Chicago Mothman, it's kind of being all around the area of the O'Hare Airport. And even looking back at this, people say, well, that Mothman is the harbinger of doom or whatever, but none of that came to be until after
Unpleasant.
the, not even that, after the Mothman Prophecies book,
True. Yeah.
because the Mothman sightings were not linked to the Silver Bridge collapse until John Keel wrote about it in the Mothman Prophecies.
Yeah.
So that connection was never made up until that point. But I have interviewed several people who have seen this creature, a large, I hesitate to use the word flying, because all the reports of people that I've actually interviewed talking about the Mothman say that it hovers, or it floats, or it'll glide. It doesn't flap when it's flying. It'll like flap to take off from a stand, but otherwise it just floats above. Like two people witnessed it flying over their cars. Both of them were in Minnesota, actually. I talked to a witness who saw it floating next to the highway in the border of Chicago and Indiana, right there, just outside of Chicago. And I had another witness as well. I can't remember what theirs was right now, but it's in our episodes on YouTube. But it's really interesting that these things are coming out. That, like I said, there's more witnesses and stuff to this, and the people are talking about it to the point where the ones that have seen it in the Chicago area around O'Hare are being told not to talk about it. A lot of the freight workers and stuff that are down there, they recorded it on their phones, and they were told, if you don't delete it, we're going to fire you. In some of the most recent reports that have come out from these clearinghouses and stuff. Again, I haven't talked to those witnesses. I'm not aware of who these people are, because obviously they want their anonymity because of losing their job or whatever. But it's very interesting that when you have an airport, especially after the things of 9/11 and some of the other terrorist events and stuff, there are security cameras everywhere. You cannot drive onto that property without being videotaped, without being recorded of some sort. So there has got to be security footage of these things if they're out there.
Most likely erased by now, but
or buried very deep.
Well,
so I don't know.
It is O'Hare though, which O'Hare has enough mythology surrounding it on its own, being built on a Native American burial ground, and then also supposedly being a reptilian / Illuminati headquarters underneath it.
Yeah.
I mean, O'Hare has so many different stories about it. It's hard to even think which ones you could possibly believe. But I mean, I heard a story on Stories with Sapphire a week or two ago. There was a Native American Nation member who spoke on her podcast about O'Hare Airport, because he found it funny that when they first built it and they were told, like, this is a Native American burial ground, are you sure you want to build it here? And the people who built it were just like, yeah, we want to build it. So, and basically they tried to bring in every major religion's official heads, priests, pastors, everything you could think of, to try to calm down the airport when it first opened. But eventually they did bring in a Native American medicine man, or I always forget what the right word is for it, but
shaman.
Yeah. Oh, they don't like being called shamans. That's what this tribe member said. They don't like calling them shamans, because that's a term white people made up for them. They like to be called, or I forget what the word he said was, but it's basically like a medicine man. And they told them, you have to, if you they investigated and tried to talk to them and did their rituals. And what basically ended up happening is, if you're in O'Hare Airport now, in certain places in the airport, you'll hear very slight background music of like a Native American track of drums and whatnot, and that appeases the spirits and calms them down. And that has been playing since like a year after the airport opened. and
Interesting.
they continuously play it 24/7 in the airport.
I
But
haven't heard that.
just low enough where you can't hear it over the chatter of thousands of people trying to get where they're going.
One of the things that I'm not sure everybody knows either about O'Hare is there actually is a cemetery on the property of O'Hare. It's in the airport itself on the property. You can drive up to it and get to it. I mean, it's still open, but it's gated and stuff. But it's backed by the freight area as well, and a lot of Mothman sightings and stuff have happened in and around that area. So I kind of touched on like some of the history and stuff of that, but as far as the creature itself goes, as I said, the dog man, there's no fossil record for these things, and even even with like mythology and stuff, you don't have a lot of lore or anything about them. If you look at cryptids around the world, you have a lot of very similar creatures though, but you have to broaden your search. Instead of searching for Mothman, you look for like flying humanoid or giant bat or winged creatures and stuff like that, because you have like things like the ahul from Papua New Guinea and stuff that are very, very similar creatures. The sounds they make, the styles, the descriptions, that these things could be mistaken or could be the same creatures, but they don't call them the same, obviously. Back to the whole Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti, stuff like that. It depends where in the world you are, and it just so happens that everyone's familiar with Mothman because there was a movie made about it.
Yeah.
But if there wasn't this pop culture reference to these creatures, if it wasn't become mainstream that way, what would you call this thing? A giant bat? Batman? No, so
Man bat.
Man bat, yeah. Moth squatch. I like that one. But yeah, I don't know what to make of them. Another thing is in the area surrounding O'Hare Airport, there is a section of forest that is between O'Hare Airport and downtown Chicago. And this section of forest runs for about, I want to say like 5 miles along the edge of O'Hare there. And it divides the city. It's not that wide. It's probably about like 2-3 city blocks wide, but it's long and it's dense, very dense in some areas. And it has a river running through it. So you have water, you have woods, you have deer, you have all kinds of natural wildlife in this area. There's the Cook County Forest Preserve in there. I forget the names of the rest of it. It's kind of broken up into, but you definitely have an area where these things could be living if they were a natural animal. But the problem with Mothman is unlike Dogman or Bigfoot, you don't have the reports of people seeing them eating. You don't see like natural animal behavior from this thing. So it is my opinion that this thing is not a biological creature as we would consider it, or at least nothing that we've encountered before. It just doesn't fit.
Which
I mean,
leads to the theory. You said it like it's been described as a forsayer of doom, which, as most people say, that would make it possibly an angel or an angelic heavenly creature. But what if it's a bringer of doom, like a demonic creature or an underworld creature? And what if when they're done, what they got to do, they return to the heavens or they return to the underworld and they stay there until they're needed again. Either direction, whichever way people fancy to think about them. But because, I mean, no one's ever seen them. I've never heard any reports of people actually seeing them doing something that would cause doom. They're just happen to be there, like in Point Pleasant or in Chernobyl or, I mean, Chicago. I've heard nothing really bad happening since they've been around.
Yeah, and when you look at like the whole Point Pleasant, West Virginia situation, that whole story took place, I believe, within a year or 2 years total.
Yeah.
And then Mothman is, I think people still claim they've seen Mothman since then, out in the TNT area and that. But I mean, nothing like the original sightings of that. But with Chicago, you've been seeing these things since 2017. I believe there might even be a couple sightings in 2016 going back there till modern day. I mean, just a couple months ago, I think was the last sighting reported coming out of the Chicagoland area, or not even that long ago. This well, now it'd be a couple months ago, back in June, but May, June area was the last sightings that I've heard as of recording this. And so people are still seeing it. Now it pops up in the same locations for quite a while. I actually went through the work of plotting every sighting on a map by color.
Mhm.
So each year I plotted the lines of where this thing was seen, and you see a distinct area that it's being seen each year. And it's not like a migrational path, because if it was migrating, it's been seen up into Wisconsin, on the far end, closer to the Madison area of Wisconsin, all the way down through Chicago, down into Indiana, over that way. And you would think that if this was a migration of it swapping back and forth, you would see one like always in January up here, and a plot line of it moving. But it covers this whole area. From 1 month it'll be up here, 1 month it'll be down here the next month. So it's not very plottable, I guess, that way. But it was really interesting to see that these sightings plotted in certain chunks or swatches, like a curvature of the different areas of the city. It started out right on the lakeshore, and then it moved in. It surrounded the airport one year, and then more lower the next year. And it's kind of interesting. But
So, which kind of makes me think almost, what if it's a government type thing as well, or extraterrestrial thing watching the government? Because Point Pleasant was the TNT area was a big government area. Chernobyl was a huge government thing in Russia or Ukraine. And O'Hare Airport in Chicago is supposedly a secret meeting base for a lot of different organizations or secret groups. So who knows? I mean, there are doors in O'Hare Airport that I've seen reports of and videos of that no one knows where they go. People that have worked there for 20 years don't know where these doors go, and they're told not to go in there.
You're also missing another link that what is the nuclear reaction project? I can't remember what the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project actually started in Chicago. There's a plaque that actually links that as well, of the nuclear testing and stuff, to the Chicagoland area.
Yeah, which that just is a whole nother. I didn't even think about that even, but yeah, that's true. That's a very true thing. And maybe that's what, I mean, people have said for years, us starting to test nuclear bombs is when alien activity really picked up on Earth. And that's when UFOs were starting to be seen more and more, because once we discovered how to start destroying ourselves, that's when the aliens want to watch to see what we're going to do with this technology.
Well, and then of course, if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, you have to bring up CERN.
I know the acronym, but I forget what it stands for.
I don't know what it stands for, actually, and I think it stands for something in French, so I couldn't tell you that anyway. But it's the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland. So it's basically, the premise is it's this giant, huge donut, and they take particles and they fly them around the donut, and they slam them into each other at very fast speeds, trying to create the God particle, or the Higgs boson, which is what is called the graviton particle. And the reason behind that would be is if we can find the graviton particle, it will lead to the discovery of alternate dimensions.
Yeah.
So that's all string theory and quantum mechanics and stuff like that.
And yes, I just Googled it. CERN does stand for a French name that I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but it translates to the European Council for Nuclear Research.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, we actually, my show Whispers from the Dark actually did an episode on CERN a little while ago. So I couldn't remember exactly what it stood for. I knew it was something in French though. So
yeah, it's like Council des European, and I'm not even going to try to butcher the rest of it.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, so I Mothman is a very interesting topic that we're never. I don't think we're not going to have answers for any time in the future, like for at least until maybe the end of humanity. Then maybe something will reveal itself, possibly, if
Mhm.
it's one of the main things that we think it might be. But it's just one of those interesting sightings, and I do love hearing the stories of the Point Pleasant sightings originally because those were all interesting sightings, and that poor dog that never came back. But and the fact that you just imagine driving down the road and having this thing chasing you is goosebump like causing.
Mhm.
But I don't know, and I'm not gonna try to guess the things I don't, I just don't know about. But all right, I say we do one more because I got a good one for the last one, and then
Let's do it.
we're done. We're gonna go with my old friend who goes by many names, but he's more commonly known as the Goat Man or
Ooh.
Pope Monster,
Hmm.
which has been the Goat Man is tied to a lot of train track legends, which basically are that he will, if you go in his territory, supposedly you'll die. Whether it's from getting hit by a train because you're trying to look for this creature and you're not looking where the train's going, or because this creature will kill you. And Poplick, I forget what state Poplick is in. I want to say Kansas or
I don't know.
I feel like I should know that. Because I think it's called Poplick County, the county it's in. What the, oh, when you hit a J,
Louisiana,
Kentucky, Kentucky,
Louisiana, Kentucky. Yep.
yeah, Louisville, Kentucky, yeah, that's where it's
Louisville. Yep.
yeah, and basically it's like a Bigfoot sized creature, but it has a goat's head and looks more like a goat with the hoofs and everything else instead of the primate feet. And it's been seen, I believe, since the 50s, 60s at least. And it's basically if you're in this area, they tell you not to go there, and cops actually actively tell people not to go in this area. They have signs posted everywhere around it: no trespassing, stay out. And the fact that's been seen more places than just Poplick, though, it's been seen in other places. The Poplick is just monster, is just one of the more famous ones. Which I mean, it goes into the whole ancient civilization conversation with satyrs from ancient Greece being half goats, half men, and it goes just through history of these different creatures that supposedly existed. But have you guys ever actually done any research into this for one of your episodes?
Not yet. No. I am familiar with it. I was going to bring up the fact that quite recently there was a woman that was out there looking for the Poplick monster and was out on the trestle and got hit and killed by a train. So I don't know if you saw that in the news, but that was right now, probably like a couple months ago, I think. So
I have heard. I've heard about that. I think a podcast talked about it, but
yeah,
I'm
there's been a lot of I mean, like as you were talking about, like, you know, the guardian of the bridges or whatever, the train trestles and that, it kind of sounds like the troll mythology, you know, like the bridge trolls and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if that's kind of linked with this whole mythology as well, with these creatures. Um,
yeah. I actually just looked it up real fast, and because I already had the public monster Googled. So, but it was actually on my birthday, May 26th, 2019, and Savannah Bright, a 15-year-old girl, was pronounced dead at the scene after she and another teenage girl were on the train tracks near the public trestle. The other girl lived apparently, but she was pronounced dead, and they don't mention if the other girl ever said that they saw anything, but the train did hit the one girl because they weren't paying attention to where they were. And I highly advise against anybody going legend tripping anywhere dangerous without proper precautions because it's just don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. Like think ahead. But that's just my little thing. I mean, I'm not gonna go climbing on a train trestle any day of the week because no, it's just no. It's just
especially if it's active.
yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, if it's an abandoned train trestle, that brings up totally different situations, because then it's dangerous because it's dilapidated and you know, not safe to walk on to begin with. But you know, be aware of your surroundings when you're going out to these places. You know, it's trespassing for one, because it's property of whatever railroad owns that trestle. One of our earlier episodes, we did urban legends, and we did the black Bridge in Stevens Point, Wisconsin,
I've heard of it.
which we actually got a lot of evidence out there. And this is a very active train trestle. While we were out there investigating, I think we had 2 or 3 trains come through in a matter of like 2 hours while we were there. And we did go on the trestle, which I don't advise. But we only went in about like 20, 30 feet on either side. And there's signals there. And if you're going to do stuff like this, you need to know what you're doing. As far as like train scanners, you can listen to when they're coming, and hear when there's a train in the area. You also want to be aware of like what's going on with the signal lights, because they'll tell you, hey, there's a train coming, in like 5 minutes. If they're green, you're good to go. If they're yellow, there's something coming. And if there's red, you need to get off that trestle. And, by doing that, we were able to stay safe and kind of take a look and get the evidence that we wanted out of there. But I mean, I don't recommend doing it if you definitely don't know what you're doing. Look into it and be safe.
Yes, if the light's red, get out of there like the boys and Stand By Me. But I mean, with the slow-mo movie scene and everything included. But it's just, and I actually just looked this up too, because I knew there was another Goatman that was famous for this, and it's the Maryland Goatman Legends, which supposedly this Goatman is the one I heard about as a kid a lot more, because it was known for killing dogs or running after cars with an axe. Because apparently this Goatman was more humanoid than goat, because it would actually think to pick up a tool. And yeah,
that's not something you hear in a lot of the cryptid reports. A lot of these things are very animalistic. You don't have, the werewolves, the Bigfoot and stuff. You don't hear them using weapons or fire or tools or any of that kind of stuff. So that's interesting.
You'll hear of a Bigfoot throwing rocks, like in the Ape Canyon incident, or like I've heard plenty of incidents of truckers parked on the side of a wooded road, all of a sudden getting woken up to a huge boulder hitting the side of their truck and denting it. And there's actually a dent there, and you could tell. And there's even been reports of Bigfoots walking atop the trailers, and you could see like the indent from their feet in it, which I'm pretty sure those trucks disappear pretty fast when they get back to their home base. But probably Men in Black, but yeah, supposedly there's a Goatman rumored to reside in a makeshift shelter in the wooded region of northwestern Prince George's County, near the vicinity of Bowie, Maryland, which it's pretty creepy. If I saw a Goatman coming at me with an axe, I might just shit my pants and die right there. Like, who knows? Like, I couldn't imagine that happening. But
it's very like what do you call it? Like the hills have eyes or something, very hillbilly backwoods kind of.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in Maryland believe that the Goatman was just made up, and someone blamed their dog. It was an ancient legend, and someone blamed the dog, like their dog getting killed by it. And since then, teenagers keep up the rumors because it's an interesting local legend for them, a hometown legend that they have. Which, I mean, supposedly the one in Maryland is supposed to haunt like lovers' lanes too, like all the classic urban legends. But who knows? I don't know, and I'm not gonna pretend to know that. All I know is if I ever see a Goatman, I'll try to take a picture before it kills me. But and that's pretty much, we hit every cryptid pretty much that I could think of at this point, which I love, because talking for 2.5 hours on cryptids is always an amazing time.
Definitely.
I could do it daily and still talk about the same things over and over again. It's still always fun.
There are hundreds of cryptids that we haven't even touched on.
Yeah, there's a lot more there's a lot more international cryptids that we didn't get to, and some American ones that we got to, but they're too similar to other ones we talked to, and I didn't want to bring them up. So, such as will-o'-the-wisp and stuff like that. But we could always do this again in the future and have another fun conversation about this stuff.
Definitely.
Just have to just research and bring up some more other ones I know of. I've always wanted to talk about the bunyip.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking of too.
But we could always do this in the future at some point as well, or I don't know. We'll see how it goes, or maybe Barnaby can come on my other paranormal podcast starting up once we start doing guests, because it is, instead of interviews, it is going to be discussions on a specific cryptid every week, kind of like your show and a lot of other shows out there. But
Monday Morning Monsters.
Yes, it's going to be kind of like that, but we're not investigators. None of us are really investigators, so that's good. That's the difference. We're just paranormal enthusiasts talking about this stuff, which Hey, we'll see what happens.
You will have to come out to the Van Meter, Iowa Festival, and we will do a live show together.
Might have to, because as soon as I mentioned it to my podcast group that was in Iowa, and they immediately were like, "Oh yeah, we know about it." I'm like,
Mhm.
"You didn't tell me though." I'm like, "I would," but maybe I will come out. I don't know. I'll see how it works out financially, but maybe I could come out, or maybe if I get them, I don't know. I doubt they want to. Do they sponsor podcasts to come out?
No, I tried to get in as a speaker, and I haven't heard back yet. They were still working on their speaker lineup as of this is that was in May. This is June now that we're recording this, and yeah, I haven't heard back yet, but I will be there as a vendor for sure. So
Yeah, maybe I'll come down and check it out and try to get some live interviews done for my show and both my shows. Even maybe I can talk to some of the other people from my other podcast to come on too. So we'll see. But
September 24th, Van Meter, Iowa.
yes, I'm gonna make notes to look into that. But all right, well, as always, let's find out where our guests can be found before we go.
Awesome. Sounds good. So you can find me at Wisconsin Caps, all spelled out, Wisconsin, CAPS.com. And that's Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society. You can find all of our YouTube shows on Wisconsin Caps. Search for that, and you can find us on there. We have a brand new main documentary show out every 2 months. We put out 6 of those a year. We also have a spin-off show called Finding Hayden, which is all about our Bigfoot research at the Hayden Adventure in Upper Michigan. And we have a lot of great evidence, audio, video, thermal trail cameras from there that's on that show. And we're still putting out new episodes all the time. We have season 1 is wrapped up and season 2 is starting now. And we've already filming season 3. We also have Caps Academy coming out soon and Ghosts of Macville, which is all about the paranormal investigations that we're doing in Macville, Wisconsin at the Gainers Tavern Bean Snappers. We do paranormal tours of Bean Snappers and Gainers Tavern. For anybody that's in the area, you can go to our website, wisconsincaps.com, click on public events, and you can find out wherever I'm going to be, all of our shows, Whispers from the Dark podcast, wherever you listen, and Monday Morning Monsters on WLTK DB Paranormal Radio.
And as everybody knows on my show, that listens to my show at least, you can find me as at Juggalo Bastard on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, though I haven't decided what I'm going to do with TikTok yet. It's still got no uploads. I only went on there because of East Coast Paranormal, so I could do the previews of their information. And you can find me on Facebook as Jeremy Bryant or under the Paranormal the New Normal Facebook group. And you can find all my other podcasts in that group as well. And anybody listening to my show by now, when this drops, should know very well what podcast I'm on. But we will see you next time on Paranormal the New Normal. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys.